Okay, Chai, are we ready to start or should we wait till we get some more viewers? We ready? Okay. All right. So, hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jessica Williams. I am the Gender Justice Director with Freedom Inc. And I also have Manka Donway, who is our Director of Community Power Building at Freedom Inc. We are here today to talk to you all about the trial of Kenyairra Gadson and the systemic issue of Black women being targeted when they are defending themselves and being tried. We want everybody to please like, share, and subscribe to Freedom Inc.'s Facebook page, Instagram pages, and Twitter pages so that you can follow and keep up with our information. Um, so I first want to introduce people if you are not familiar with the trial. Move my camera. Where do you want me to move it to? All right, y'all, we are back. Had to make some moves for security purposes, but we're good on this end. Yeah, so Kenyairra Gadson is a young Black woman here in Madison, Wisconsin, who have been, for years, being antagonized and attacked by the same man and group of friends and family over and over again. Um, and in October of 2018, him and a group of friends attacked her. She had to defend herself, and one of those people, unfortunately, ended up losing their life. Freedom Inc. is a gender justice organization. We absolutely believe in the right of Black women and queer people to fight and to survive. We absolutely want them to live. And that is why we are supporting Kenyairra Gadson. One thing that I do want to talk about is one of our foundations is transformative justice, and we will be leaning into that, into our transformative justice principles and values, and supporting families, Kenyairra's family and the victim's family. We do want to say also that we are saddened and we're really hurt by the loss of life of any Black person. And we absolutely care about the life that was lost. And we also know that we believe in a Black woman's right to defend herself and to survive and to live. So we will continue offering support as long as the parties are willing to accept those things. We have been supporting them with mental wellness services. We have been supporting them with housing. We have attempted to have transformative processes, and we have access to mental wellness services for everyone involved. So those are some of the things that we're doing at Freedom Inc. and to try to heal some of the harm that's happened in our communities. And we also want to talk about um, what next steps we need to take and what are some bigger picture things that we need to do and other changes that we should see. But first, I'm going to pass it over to Monka, who is going to talk about um, the reason that we are really centering Black women and queer folks in our work.
Thanks, Jessica. Like she said, I'm Manka. I am one of the community power building directors at Freedom Inc., which means I'm out in the community doing outreach, especially around our electoral work in ways that we can make demands of our government to do better by us, right, and for our communities. Um, you know, one thing that Jessica really said is that, it's never too late to start a transformative justice process. And we are deeply saddened, right? Where it hurts whenever there's a loss of life. I myself, I'm a mother of a Black boy. I understand losing, like, the type of pain that would be to lose a child, and I'm also a queer Black woman who understands the type of violence that Black men and other folks and in general, even strangers off the street, down from family members to strangers off the street, will do to you if they perceive you as a queer person, right? And so in that sense, and that being said, like, as an organization, that's our politic. That Black women and queer folks are deserving of protection, period. And that we never want to throw away a Black woman's life on top of harm that's already been done. We deserve to defend ourselves from threats to our safety. And so we're going to take a look at how this isn't just something about Kenyairra Gadson and whether we have a personal relationship or anything like that, or we like Kenyairra more than anything or whatever. This is a pattern in the criminal justice system. Sorry, my kids wants to join the live. This is a pattern in the criminal justice system in our society as a whole to demonize and dehumanize Black women when we defend ourselves. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica to speak a little more about the Kenyairra Gadson case, but we're also going to look at CeCe McDonald, Centoya Brown, Crystal Kaiser, and Marissa Alexander, to name a few.
Yeah, thank you, Malka. And so this is really important that we highlight how this issue is really a national issue. It's also a global issue, but we're going to really highlight how here in the US, not just in Madison and not just in Wisconsin or Dane County, this is a national issue that Black women and Black queer folks have had to endure for decades and centuries. So again, like I said with Kenyairra, she has been surviving attacks and abuse from this individual, from this family for years. In 2018, After one of their attacks, she was jailed for fighting back in her own self defense. Kenyairra endured years um, of violence from them. She endured years of violence sitting in the Dane County Jail. She sat for 2 years. Um, and in this whole time, I do want to point out that the police never came to save her. They never helped her. They never assisted. They were never able to prevent the harm or stop the harm that had happened to her. Kenyairra has been vilified in the media. There are countless articles. If you look her up, there are countless articles um, vilifying her and saying that she was the one who initiated the conflict, saying that she is deserving of whatever punishment comes her way. She's been vilified by the DA's department. In this trial alone, we can see in the DA's opening argument that he's using a very homophobic trope and saying that Kenyairra, this Black queer woman, somehow lured a group of men into a parking garage so that she could shoot them. And we know that that type of homophobic belief is what we often hear about queer folks, trans folks, and gender nonconforming folks. Often we label them, society labels them as predatory and harmful. And that is what the DA is doing in this case. Our community also, because we see that when something like this happens with a man in our community, people are so quick to support. So many organizations want to support. People show up, people show out, people are talking about it, people are sharing stories, they're sharing all of the news articles. That's not happening with Kenyairra, and we know that it's not happening with Kenyairra because she's a Black woman and because she is a Black queer woman. And because of that, we also see that she's been minimized. She's not been talked about. She's not been supported in the same way that we see Black men be supported. And that's what we want to change here in Madison. And Kenyairra is just one story, one local story. But like we said, we have Black women and Black queer women across the country who have faced the same things. Um, Monka, did you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about CC McDonald?
Yes, I also had like one more thing to add around when you were talking about Kenyairra, how she was vilified by the sheriff, by the media, and then eventually by our community. I've never before seen the sheriff do a press conference after someone has been bailed out to heighten and cause hysteria and say this is a terrible criminal that has been let on the loose, like the way that the sheriff did when the bail fund bailed out Kenyairra. And so those are some of the things that we have to be on the lookout for. You know, if the police and in the courts and the sheriff is like, this person is so bad, maybe we should second guess that. Just the same way that we give Black men in our community the benefit of the doubt, maybe we should second guess that. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about CC McDonald and Centoya Brown. In the case of CC McDonald, she's at the time she was a young Black trans woman who was just hanging out with her friends walking down the street when a group of white men assaulted her. It's specifically because she was trans and Black. She tried to escape but was followed. And when she finally tried to get them away from her and fight back, she ended up being arrested and sentenced to 40 years in a men's prison um, for fighting back for her life. And we saw the way that the media took that and ran with that. Again, the same type of tropes that the DA is invoking around luring and around being deserving of that type of violence, and we're completely against that line of thinking. Um, Also, like this, like similarly, Centoya Brown, which is a more, I would say, because of organizing efforts, is a more well-known case. She was a sexually exploited youth and charged with murdering the pedophile who purchased her for sex. And she was 16 at the time, but was tried as an adult because the judge cited that she was a great danger and risk to society. This is how we are so afraid of Black women and girls in our communities, right? She ended up being sentenced to life with 50 years before even having a chance at parole. And like I said, due to organizing, she ended up only serving 15 years. Well, not only, that's a long time to be locked up, but she ended up serving a fraction of her sentence, which was 15 years. And even to this day, you still have family members saying, "Oh, it was the activist mob and their repetition of her lies and slander that got her out," right? And so I'm gonna go ahead. Those are just two. Justin's gonna talk about a couple more that really illustrate this point, that this isn't just about just one individual. It's a systemic thing that we all should be standing against.
Yeah, exactly, Malka. Thank you so much. And one more point about CC McDonald. Um, One thing that really stood out in that case was that this group of people have been calling her a transphobic slurs and racial slurs. And then one of the women hit her in the face with a piece of glass and like cut her cheek open. She tried to get away from them. She tried to run away. And the same thing that happened with Kenyairra happened to Cece. She was followed and forced to fight back and defend herself. Despite that course of events, she was still found guilty. That's what's really upsetting about this. One thing that is hopeful, though, is with both Cece and Santoya, the reason that they got off is because we fought for them, is because people pushed, because organizers pushed, we talked, we uplifted their voices, we started campaigns. That's why they got off, is because of the community, is because power of the people. And that's what we want to do for Kenyairra as well. But I am going to go on and talk about another case here in Wisconsin that people are probably very familiar with, Crystal Kaiser. Crystal Kaiser was arrested and jailed in 2018 for also surviving sex trafficking. She was 17 years old at the time. And the person who had her in this system of sexual exploitation was abusing her, and in self-defense, she fought back and he ended up losing his life. Crystal Kaiser, unfortunately, is still being charged. We are still fighting to save her from this system. So it is not over. It is not over for her, and we have to continue to push in the same ways that we have to continue to push for Kenyairra. And the last one we want to talk about is a really popular case of Marissa Alexander, who had an abusive husband who physically abused her and her children multiple times over the years. He was a known abuser to her and her family. He came to their house and threatened her. She tried to run to the garage to get away. She wanted to get in the car and leave. But when she got there, she realized that she did not have her keys. So her husband was in the garage with her. She fired one warning shot into the ceiling, did not aim it at him or anyone else. Marissa Alexander was sentenced to 20 years in prison after firing that one warning shot. And the only reason that she got out is, again, because of community organizing, because of mass mobilization, because of like the push from grassroots movements to get her free. So the point I think that we are trying to make is, yes, this is a national and historic systemic issue that Black women face and that Black queer people face. But also, we are here fighting and we refuse to lose another Black woman to the system. The only thing that has ever saved us was us. We keep us safe. That is something that we say all the time, and it is something that we absolutely believe in. We keep us safe. And the power of the people is the only thing that will get us through. When it comes to Black women, no one has ever come up. No one has ever saved us. It has always been us doing for ourselves. And that's the same thing that we're going to have to do right now. We have to continue the fight for Crystal Kaiser, and we also have to keep up the fight for Kenyairra Gadson. So again, make sure y'all like this broadcast, follow Freedom Inc. on social media. Please share this live on your own Facebook feeds so that we can get it out to as many people as possible. There's also a petition that we want people to sign that'll be dropped down in a little bit. Monka, let's talk about how this also ties into our invest and divest work that we're doing at Freedom Inc.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in community outreach work for a long time. And that's how I serve here at Freedom Inc. And one thing that people always ask us on the doors or over the phones or when we're texting folks is, okay, so this is a problem. How are we going to solve it? How do we address it? Right. Um, and I think it first starts with us recognizing that the only enemy here, or the central and main enemy here, is the criminal injustice system. They don't care about us. They just want to fill their jails and their prisons. They don't care about the family that's hurting. They don't care about any of that. Though they will pretend to do so. The DA will pretend to do so. The DA's office will do that. The sheriff will pretend. All those people, but at the end of the day, the outcome of their places of work are more black bodies in jails and more families being torn apart and more people losing their lives and getting sick in jail from COVID and all of that, right? They've done nothing to actually build up the community. Their big key to this, or their big solution for this, is to disappear people right out of the communities. Um, and we understand that, like, the only way to, like, prevent these situations is not by, like, taking it to court and trying to lock up more and more people about it. It's to actually shift our values. We actually need to divest from the criminal injustice system, and then invest in our communities to address healing, address the problems of poverty, address the problems of oppression that even led to this situation being remotely okay, right? In their minds, to start to follow someone to do harm to them, right? Um, and address the lack of power that we have as a people. And that really leads into, like, our community control work. And I think that you, Jessica, you're our director of gender justice, and the work that you do with survivors, and really bringing them into their power around community control, is really important to talk about. So I'll pass it back over to you to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Monka. And so we really did. We are going to talk about community control. I really wanted to point out one other thing quick. So we're really highlighting, right, the systemic issues that we're seeing around Black women and queer Black women. Another thing that we need to highlight is the ways that white men, who often perpetrate much harsher crimes, are given so much more leniency and so much more support, and often do not face these really long trials, and this intense scrutiny and destruction of character, right? So if we think about Matt Kinney, right? Like, everybody remembers Matt Kinney. Matt Kinney shot and killed a teenager. He killed Tony Robinson because he was having a mental wellness crisis. The DA, Ishmael Ozan, didn't even want to press charges against Matt Kinney. He was allowed to go free. They did nothing to him. And then we have Kyle Rittenhouse in Kenosha, who came across state lines with a weapon and killed protesters in the street. They didn't want to try to arrest him. They let him go. They didn't want to convict him. That was a push from the people to get that to happen. But when it comes to Black women like Kenyairra like Crystal, like Centoya, and like Marissa, they're quick to pull us up, to shut us up, to put us down, to incarcerate us. So, what we are asking for, and this is why we need transformative justice, because we need to transform our communities instead of being punitive and punishing and wanting to throw away and wanting to demonize people in our communities. We know that the reasons that any crime happens in our community is really invented by the state and invented by the government. It is intentional. It is an intentional um, destruction of resources, um, lack of resources, and isolation of resources that leads to crime in our communities. So we have some calls to action that we want from you all at home. We are inviting people to join us at the courthouse as we are awaiting Kenyairra's verdict. The trial's been going on this is the third week of the trial. We've been waiting. The jury has been deliberating since about noon yesterday. So we are still here at the courthouse today, waiting to hear what the jury decides. And we invite folks from the community who support Kenyairra and her family to come and be with us on the fourth floor in the courthouse. We're in room 4A. That's where the verdict will be read. We also have a petition that may have been dropped or should be dropped in a second that we want people to sign. We need everybody to sign this petition, pass it on to your family, your friends, your coworkers, everybody in your community that you think cares at all for Black women. Have them sign that petition so that we can show the DA and we can show the state that we love Black women, that we love Kenyairra, and that we are fighting for her, and we will continue this fight. We want her to have a not guilty verdict today. We know that the jury is deliberating, but Ishmael Ozan, our DA, has time and time again thrown women away, has not supported them. He has criminalized Black women for having mental wellness crises. And we've had enough of it. So we also encourage people to call the DA's office and let them know how they feel about Ishmael Ozan. Have them call the DA's office and demand that he drop charges against Kenyairra Gadson. His phone number, the DA's number, will be dropped in the chat as well. And lastly, stay connected with us. Make sure that you like and follow our Facebook, like and follow our Twitter page, like and follow our Instagram. Share those out and stay connected as we continue sharing posts around Kenyairra, as we continue updating around the verdict that we are awaiting, and what actions we take in the future.
Yeah. Thank you for reiterating, Jessica, all throughout this live that it's by our power and our power alone that there's going to be any movement on this. So if you're someone who's sitting on the sidelines saying, oh, poor so-and-so, or I wish I could do something, now is your chance to take action, right? We all like to talk about what we would have done if we were around in the civil rights movement and they were just marching and they wasn't doing nothing. What about what you're doing right now in defense of a Black woman? You know, definitely these are the really good first steps in taking revolutionary action towards our liberation as a whole. So go ahead and take those actions. Like Jessica said, we need people down at the courthouse. Because there is power in numbers. We need people to call in because there is power in public perception. And making the DA's office feel embarrassed, making Madison as a whole feel embarrassed for their repeated pattern of criminalizing and throwing the book at Black women. We both work with clients, Jessica more than I do anymore, but sitting in court sometimes and hearing how these attorneys are crucifying Black women on a daily for surviving, enough is enough. So we need to make it be known that we're sick of it, right? And we need change. And so I just want to thank everyone for joining. thank everyone for joining, making sure that everyone has time to get over to the courthouse. And then definitely like and share. Like, share, tag folks in this live, but also um, future things that we might be posting about Kenyairra and other survivors that are being criminalized in a similar way. So yeah, we love y'all. Love and power from Freedom Inc. And we hope that everyone has a good one out there and stay safe out there.
Yeah, thanks. And follow us, because as soon as we get a verdict, we are going to be sharing that out with the community. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Samantha. Bye.
Bye.
Can you tell me a little bit about Kenyairra, about your daughter?
This is my third daughter out of 5 girls. Kenyairra was very mild as a child. She didn't complain. She went to school every day. She did her chores on time. She was very cooperative as a kid. She played sports. She mentored after she got further in high school. She mentored a lot of her classmates, helping them with jobs and applications, and that kind of thing. Well-mannered, very well-mannered. Never raises her voice. Just an easy child. She was easy. She was one of the easy ones. She was really easy.
Yeah.
A 21-year-old man has died from his injuries after what police are calling a targeted shooting in a downtown parking ramp after Freak Fest early Sunday morning. Police Chief Mike Koval says it happened around bar time in the State Street campus parking ramp just off University Avenue. There is still no suspect.
She just made adulthood, and boom. This is what we've been going through for a few years. Before that, she was work steady all the time. She enjoyed hanging out with some of her friends, traveling. Her dad lives in another state, grandmother and great grandma. She was awesome as an adult. And then this took place, so it was just a short time frame for her and to, be able to enjoy after graduating and being an adult. Yeah.
I like music. I like playing basketball. I enjoy, hanging, playing a game sometimes. Or sometimes just sitting there thinking about what I need to do, like future goals and stuff like that. Other than that, I just be chilling. Like, I'm real cool. My thoughts before catching my case was to basically succeed in life, chase my dreams, which was being an artist. Also, I wanted to be an attorney, so I knew eventually I wanted to go back to school to be a criminal defense lawyer. So basically, I was just thinking about my future goals and what I need to do. That's when I started performing. I had a plan like ABC, basketball, music, attorney. So, I was just bouncing around until I got to where I was going, until I got interrupted by this case. So that's basically what I was thinking about, being able to help my family.
Over a period of years, Kenyairra and her family had been having different types of negative interactions with this man that lives in Madison. It wasn't an intimate partner or anything like that. It was just someone who I think lived in the same neighborhood. They knew each other, and for whatever reason, he had an issue with her, had an issue with her family, and started antagonizing her over a period of years. I know that at some point before the incident that led up to Kenyairra being put in jail and charged, he had threatened her multiple times, and he had actually physically shot a gun at her at one point as well. And so fast forward a couple of years, through all these different incidents that have been happening between him and her. It was the night of Halloween in 2018. Kenyairra and some friends were hanging out, and they decided to go downtown to have a drink before bar time. It was getting late, so they wanted to just hurry up and go have a drink or two. So they got downtown. and they parked in a parking garage. When they left the parking garage to walk to the bar, they crossed paths with this man and a group of his friends, and then they started following them. They ended up following them into the parking garage where the car was parked. Once they got close to their vehicle, the man and at least one other friend started attacking the group of friends that Kenyairra was with. Started like punching them. They were both attacking him at that point. They were also really close to getting to Kenyairra, and she was afraid. And I think in like just a moment of impulse, she reached for a gun that was in the car. She shot one shot. It ended up hitting one of the men that was attacking and assaulting them, and everything stopped. Everyone stopped at that moment. And Kenyairra turned herself in. I believe it was the next day. So yeah, that is what led up to Kenyairra's arrest in 2018, where she was kept in jail up until 2020. That was the year of the uprisings. Yeah. Yep. And so that's when during the uprisings, there was an influx of donations coming into bail funds, I think nationwide, which gave us the opportunity to look at people who had much higher bails than we usually were able to look at. And so that's when we came across Kenyairra and started looking into her case and decided to bail her out and support her.
As a community, we can uplift survivors of violence by first hearing them, believing them, supporting them in recovery. We can also uplift survivors by looking towards their protection, surrounding them with grace and love, making sure that they have the resources that they need to heal and survive and thrive and move forward from any violence that they may have faced. We can also proactively, again, with investments into our community, talk about how we can put systems and ways into place where they would never have to have suffered that violence in the first place. That's the important part. And that's another part of the abolitionist piece, is that we would be building things into place where we are feeding folks so that they don't have to suffer the violence, or there are other means in place for them to have care, mental care, health care, childcare, all the things that you need to survive. We need to make sure are in place for everyone, but in particular, our queer, trans, intersex folks and survivors of violence and abuse.
We as a community can better support survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, specifically like Black, queer, trans, and intersex folks, by, I feel like, first, like dismantling the narrative that Black women, queer folks, queer, trans, and intersex folks are automatically deviant or the criminal. I think that while rationally and logically, like, we understand that, I think that there's a lot of like implicit bias and prejudice that goes into the decision making when cases like this happen. And it's really unfortunate to think about that, when if Kenyairra was of a different demographic, like the entire trajectory of her sentencing in this case so far would probably have gone in a different way. And I think, like, in addition to like a cultural paradigm or shift, like, we need to advocate for more nuance within like our legal systems, because, like, I mean, one is within our constitutional rights, but also just like on a moral ground, that we should be able to act in our self-defense. And, especially as like women and queer folks, I think like there should be added empathy for when folks in that demographic react to the situations of like violence, which I don't think has been extended to Kenyairra. And also, people don't belong in prisons. So that's why I think that we're so supporting her.
I don't think the argument is that we just need to get rid of police and do nothing and then everything will be fine. I think something that people need to really start thinking about and looking into is how much resource we put into the police. And because so many of our city and state budgets go toward policing, there is so little left to go into other areas that our community needs, right? And it doesn't matter where in the world you are, in what state, what city, what county, anytime you have people that are facing poverty, people's needs are not being met, there are no jobs, there are no housing, people don't have decent pay, people have lack of access to food, all of these basic needs are not met. That leads to an increase of violence because people are like struggling and fighting to survive in whichever way they can. To other survivors out there who are watching your case, what do you want them to know about your experience?
Basically, through it all, is to stay strong, keep your head up, keep your feet down, and to never give up. Always keep your faith, and you'll get to where you want to go. And God will show you where He needs you to be.
With pure honesty, that's gotta feel good. You know what I'm saying? When
Yeah,
you're
the
bringing honesty.
The
to
truth shall set
table.
you free.
Yeah.